Thank you for joining us for our second community meeting for Winthrop Playground. My name is Nathan Frazee. I'm the project manager from the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. Next. So a little housekeeping. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the project website. Christine, do you mind posting the link for that? That link is going to be at the end of the presentation, but it's also in the chat now. So feel free to share with any neighbors or constituents that maybe weren't able to attend but would be interested. During the presentation portion, we ask that you keep your video and mic off. However, during the discussion period, we hope, and if you're comfortable with it, you certainly can turn your video on. Next. So we want to ensure this conversation is a pleasant experience for all, and that community members are comfortable sharing their comments, questions, and feedback. Please be respectful and mindful of each other's time, as we only have an hour and a half together tonight. Let's keep the questions and comments project specific and on point, and please wait until all attendees had the opportunity to ask a question or provide a comment before asking a second one. Additionally, my contact information is at the bottom of the screen. It will also be at the end of the presentation, and it's on the project website. So if there is anything that you want to continue discussing or anything privately, you can certainly feel free to reach out directly to me. Next. So I know we're all Zoom pros at this point, but just to run through all of the items associated with Zoom here. As I mentioned earlier, if you're comfortable, you can turn on your cameras during the discussion portion. During that time, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself when you are called upon. There are additional prompts for anybody that you can do yes or no. So you can also answer questions by clicking those. If you have a question during the presentation, you can add that to the chat box, and we'll do our best to answer those throughout the presentation. Please only use that chat for comments and questions related to the project. During our discussion, as I mentioned, you can turn your video on. We miss seeing everyone's face, so hopefully, allowing your cameras on, we can simulate an in-person meeting as much as possible. Next. So tonight's agenda includes introduction of the design team, project overview, presentation from the design team that includes previous site analysis and design concepts. And then we'll open that up to a listening and a discussion. And then we'll end with closing remarks and next steps. Next. So as I mentioned, my name is Nathan Frazee. I'm the project manager from the Parks Department overseeing this project. Our moderator tonight is Christine Brandeo, who is also our department's outreach coordinator in charge of external affairs. Her contact information is there. She's also an excellent contact for friends groups. So if anybody's interested in establishing a friends group, she would be our point of contact. From our design team, we have BSC group is Monique Hall. She's the landscape architect. And then I also included the Office of Neighborhood Services contact for Deshaun. So if there's any questions, concerns, or issues in the neighborhood that's not specific to the park, he would be the appropriate contact for those. Next. So this project, here's our project schedule and funding. Consists of capital commitment of $2.375 million, of which we have $400,000 from a park grant from the state funding. We are in our second meeting tonight, January 19th, and we already have our third scheduled for March 9th. So mark your calendars now, and we'll all come back and join at that point. Following that meeting, the design team will continue to advance the construction documents, and we anticipate going out to construction this summer with an opening of the park in spring of 2023. Next. So you may remember these are from our first meeting, but just a reminder, there's a lot of considerations that go into park design. So within our project, it consists of community input, that way where we are tonight, safety and regulatory guidelines, City of Boston priorities, and parks and recreation goals. Next. So just really going to run through these quick, just so we can get to the concepts and the meat of the meeting. City of Boston priorities include expanding walkable access to parks, addressing equity, climate resiliency, health, and housing and community building. Next. The Parks Department goals include accessible and available to all, diverse, balanced, and efficient mix of uses, meaningful inclusive community engagement, adaptive and resilient landscapes, and promote connections. Next. So the elements that go into play, this is the science of play, include social, physical, cognitive, sensory, and communication. At our previous meeting, we had a slide that goes into examples of each of these things. So if you're interested in reading back on those, feel free to go back to our previous presentation. But I want to keep these 5 elements in mind when we start to look at the concepts that Monique's going to present. Next. So a little bit of history. The park was established in 1911. The playground was last renovated in 2008. The basketball courts recently had a crack repair and repainting in 2020. During that process, there was a lot of community feedback, and it highlighted the need for a community process. And that's a good example of community engagement and how you guys are helping direct and lead the process here tonight. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Monique, and she's going to go through the site analysis from previous meetings and concepts based on the input from the previous meeting. The one thing I do want to make sure you are aware of, so she's going to show you several concepts. Your feedback tonight is, you know, are these concepts reflective of the input you provided before? But also, it's not 100% on that design. So if you like elements from each one, we want to hear that. And then what Monique and her team will do, they'll take that information, they'll combine that all down to a preferred plan. And on our March meeting, we'll be reviewing that, making sure we're still on the same page. We still are reflecting the input you guys provided to us, and that's the plan we want to proceed with. So with that being said, Monique, take it away.
Thanks very much, Nate. Once again, my name is Monique Hall. I'm with BSC Group, and joining me this evening from BSC Group is Singning Kuo and Tanya Pandey. We're all very interested in hearing what you have to say at the end, and we'll all be taking diligent notes to make sure that the park meets your needs in a meaningful way. So just a brief review of the site. Can everyone see my cursor if I move it around? It's hovering over the John Winthrop School.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have John Winthrop School, and then that bounds the park to the north. To the south, it's been bounded by residential properties, and then to the west by Dacia Street, and to the east by Danube Street. The park consists of 2 play areas. In yellow, we have the 2 to 5-year-old playground, which I'll commonly refer to as toddler age. There's a splash pad in the center, and then a 5 to 12-year-old playground, which I may refer to as school age. On Dacia Street, there's significant grade change. It's about elevation 53 and then a 10-foot wall to elevation 63 for the playground. So this magenta line represents a large retaining wall. A primary portion of the park is made up of 2 courts. We have a basketball court, and we have an underutilized or never utilized tennis court in the center. And then that's surrounded by an open field and outdoor fitness equipment, and then site lighting scattered throughout. Along Danube Street, there's some game tables and chairs, and then the path of the sun is through this south. So with regards to circulation, the light blue shows the accessible routes. So really the only accessible routes that are wheelchair accessible are from Danube Street. So you could enter this way and have access to the field. You could come around this way to have access to the school age playground or to the toddler age playground. On Dacia Street right now, there's currently 2 sets of stairs, so there's no accessible route. There's no wheelchair access. The white lines that you see are flights of stairs. So there is sidewalks and stairs there, but it is not an accessible route. So that'll be one of the things that we'll be attempting to address in all three of the schemes that you'll be seeing next, is ensuring that there's accessible route from both Danube Street and Dacia Street. So this is Scheme A, and we're going to call this Central Sports Courts. This is essentially the same program in the exact space, but everything gets renovated and upgraded. I shouldn't say the exact space. We still have the two courts in the center, but they are pushed away from the edge. And the reason for that is we'd like to open up sight lines throughout the park. One way to do that is to take down some of the fencing where it's not needed. So we did talk about doing multi-sports courts where we could do basketball, could be volleyball, could be tennis, could be street hockey. So the court that you see at the top of the page would be a basketball court, but could also have a center net. And then there would be fencing on both sides for high-flying balls. And then at the lower, it would still be a multi-use court, but again, pushed away from the sidewalk so that we could begin to take that fencing down. At the edge of the sidewalk, we would provide like a timber guardrail because we still see, balls could go into the street, but most of the play action is happening on a north to south or left to right axis on this option. This provides a large multi-use lawn to the south. It's about 15,000 square feet, and then as an opportunity to do some upgraded fitness equipment off in this corner. We think the fence line that's existing at the south edge, it's leaning, it has several trees growing into it. Some of these trees are nuisance trees, and then some of these larger mature trees, they appear to be in a state of decline, so we would have an arborist come and look at all the trees and evaluate the trees for health. But just from general appearance, we're thinking that most of these are on their way out. So we're proposing all trees along this fence line and then erecting the fence line to be straight and erect. We talked about access around the park, so we have a perimeter path that goes around. So in addition to the sidewalk at Danube Street, this would be inboard, and this path is about 1/8 of a mile. So if you did 8 laps around this path, you would have walked a full mile. And then flanking this path, we could have picnic tables. We talked about having seating that's wheelchair accessible, so that's the 3-seater. But we also talked about having seating for card games. So there's several 4-seat tables. We could do benches throughout. And then seating in between the two courts as well. At the toddler age playground, this is pretty much the same footprint, and the multi-use splash pad is still pretty much the same footprint, and the school age playground is still pretty much the same footprint. The exception being is that we now have an accessible route from Dacia Street. So there would be a ramp that comes in here, turns, comes all the way down, and then provides access to Danube Street. So what that looks like is shown in here in the cyan color. So if you're coming from Dacia Street, once again, it's almost a straight shot to get you into the park without having to go up any stairs. The numbers are just kind of showing the elevations to give you a sense of where you are. So if Dacia Street's at 53, then Danube Street is at 63. So it's 10 feet grade change. And then the school age playground would be sloping. And so it would kind of be a playground that's built into a hill. With this concept, there's a couple of large linden trees here that provide shade on the school age playground. To provide this circulation, these large trees would have to get removed, and we would replace them to provide shade. And you know, they do provide a significant amount of overhead canopy, whether that's good or bad. But we are proposing replanting trees where we take them out, but also adding the large green circles are canopy trees, and the smaller pink circles would be kind of ornamental smaller trees like cherry trees. So this is Scheme A. The courts remain in the center of the park. They're spread out so that we can take down some of the fences. We have a perimeter path. The play spaces are at the same locations, and we have an accessible route from Dacia Street to Danube Street, and then the fitness equipment gets upgraded kind of in the same location. Moving on to Scheme B, we could take the footprint of those courts and move them to the south. In doing so, that would create a large central lawn. This lawn's about 11,000 square feet. It's pretty good size. This gives us an opportunity to do like a trike track, so a safe place to ride a tricycle or for kids to rollerblade around, as well as having a walking path that circulates around as well. In this scheme, the central lawn could be flanked by picnic tables, benches. We could have some game tables to the side as well. And then the sports courts, the same thing. We would do a court that has that would be multi-use for tennis and basketball and volleyball and soccer. And we would have one that would not have a net. In this option, the outdoor fitness area gets relocated to the street, but with a buffer up against the sidewalk. So there's a little bit of landscape that happens in between just for separation. In between the large lawn and the courts, there could be a small secondary lawn. So at the large lawn, you know, if there's a yoga class for like 50, maybe at the secondary lawn there's a yoga class for like 5 or 6, or that could be for smaller, more intimate gatherings. In this scheme, the multi-use splash pad moves from the center, which gives us more space to do more play equipment for the school age. We talked about maybe doing some swings. Swings do have a large footprint, so this would allow us to look at doing larger structures for school age, but also have the potential for installing some swings, in which case the splash pad would get removed to this corner over by Dacia Street. The toddler age playground pretty much stays the same. And then along Danube Street, we would do a low fence just so if there's a soccer game going on, the ball's kind of traveling east-west, and so we don't want the ball kind of moving into the street. So this line would be like a low fence. Circulation-wise, it's almost the same. It's not a direct route. It's a little bit of a zigzag. The accessible ramp occurs closer to the school, and then you can exit onto Danube Street or into the park. So to recap, Scheme B, the courts move to the south edge. We have a large central lawn and a smaller secondary lawn. We would expand the school age playground. Once again, this means removing the large canopy trees and then replacing them with new trees that would provide shade over the years, but it wouldn't be instantaneous. And then having the splash pad in this corner up at elevation 63. And the third scheme, that's kind of a departure from both of them, whereas both of the previous schemes had the play area in the same place adjacent to the school. This one takes the toddler age and the school age and places it parallel to Dacia Street on the upper level. What that does is allows 2 lawn areas for multi-use areas, so these are comparable size. It also expands the play area for the school age playground, so once again we're looking at trying to provide some larger structures. And then the circulation happens in kind of a U-shaped all at once around the splash pad. So what that looks like is the splash pad happens where the school age playground is right now. So there's a big 10-foot wall right here. So Dacia Street's at 53. The splash pad's where the existing playground is right now at elevation 63. In this scheme, the 2 existing linden trees, which are kind of these stick figure trees, would remain in the same location. So we could preserve those in place. We have the 2 lawn areas, both on Danube Street, and then this is just a different configuration for the courts, which have now moved to the south. I don't know why there's an ornamental tree in the center of the court. That's an error in my graphic, but we're not proposing an ornamental tree. But once again, we have the tennis net, so it could be It could be two half courts, or the net could be moved off to the side and you could have a full basketball court. Plenty of room for outdoor fitness. We have some picnic tables, benches, kind of at different locations throughout the park. And then we have a fence along Danube Street to keep the balls from going into the street. So fence along the courts, fence along the lawn, and there should be a fence here as well. Excuse me for a second. Okay, so those are the three schemes. I'm going to talk briefly about proposed play equipment, and then we'll move into listening and discussion. So some of the general play elements that we like to see in playgrounds are spinners. So there's single spinners, there's multi-user spinners, where you stand on it and someone pushes you, and then this is a nice fun spinner that there's a center wheel, so you could be actually in the spinner and spinning yourself. And this is one of my favorite pieces of equipment. This is a Supernova, so it's all about balance and spinning, and it's fun for all ages. And a little bit about swings. This is a new swing. It's called a Face Me swing. So there's several varieties of it, but this one has a bucket seat for like an infant or a toddler, and then a regular seat. So you don't have to push the smaller child. You can be on the seat facing the child. At the same time, you could also do it with an inclusive seat. So here we have an adult with a smaller child. I think this would be a great element to have for the 2 to 5 age group. And then for the 5 to 12, because we are limited on space, we would probably propose the Nest swing where you can get multiple users. And then depending on the final layouts, if there was space, we could consider incorporating some single user swings for larger groups, larger age groups. Because we have the 10 feet of grade change between Dacia Street and Danube Street, that gives us a great opportunity to take advantage of that 10-foot slope. So this is Harambe Park, and this is a traditional slide that's built into the slope. So instead of having a ladder at the back of the slide, there's an opportunity to climb up some rubber surface mounds, and there's some footholds. It could be a rope ladder that goes up this. We did talk about color at our last meeting, and I just want to say for all of the play equipment, there's multiple options to provide color, to customize the color. So there's options to pick out the colors of the panels of the slides. There's options to pick out the colors of the rubber surfacing. So if you see something here and it's a color you don't like, don't feel like you have to be tied to that color. So we can certainly work through color schemes, but these are just images just reflecting precedents that have been built. Another way to take advantage of the slope is to do a wide embankment slide. So I think anyone who has kids knows that kids will go up slides as much as they will go down slides. And we always get the kind of traffic jam when there's a kid kind of going up and the kid coming down at the same time. So having a wide embankment slide is an option to have multiple users at the same time. And then here's that kind of like rope that goes up the slide. So the primary structure at the 2 to 5 inclusive playground currently is just a traditional post and platform like we see here. This is great for younger age groups. The typical play activities involve a series of steps, some platforms, could be some little houses or hutches, a slide. There's typically a ladder or two and some sensory panels. So that's what we see on the left-hand side. Here's another three-dimensional view. Again, we've got the platforms. There's probably some steps behind here. Here's the ladder. There's several options for the slides, and then the kids feel like they've achieved something on these platforms, and it's a great place for them to look out. On the right-hand side, there's an opportunity to still do the traditional post and platform, but maybe incorporate some additional activities for play. So in this top one, we still have, there's stairs, there's the slide, here's the ladder, but maybe there's a climbing net, or maybe there's a spiral climber off to the side. This is like a little, it's got a tether, so it's not a true swing, but it's a little balancing kind of spot for a child. And then in this bottom image, again, it's ladders, but just in a non-traditional form. The platform is here. There's a slide here, and then there's a little net. It's hard to see, but there's a little net for more adventurous youth. So this is the kind of feedback we want to hear for the 2 to 5 inclusive playground. You know, what should the primary structure be? Should it be traditional post and platform? Should it be a little more I don't want to say adventurous. Should it be a little more dynamic, you know, for this age group?
And you all can continue to comment in the chat feature. We're recording all of that as well. So that's all going to go into our input in the design process.
Yep. At the 2 to 5 inclusive playground, I think there's always a need for sensory panels. So having like something that the kids can move, whether it's a face of a clock or counting beads or having numbers or having a blackboard where you can actually write on, is a key element for play. A balance beam is a very simple one that kids have always loved. The Springer, it's a timeless classic that never gets old, as well as the seesaw. And then for the 5 to 12, the school age group, once again, we have Harambe Park, so post and platform with some hybrid elements. So the platform is the ramp leading here, and then there's more platforms leading up to a higher elevation. We have 2 fun twisty-turvy slides. In between, there's some steppers here. There's kind of a rope stepping kind of form in here. It's similar to this image that's on the right. So that's kind of more traditional. Or do we want to be a little more adventurous and maybe there's a slide that's not accessible by a platform, but that's a net climber. This is another piece of equipment that was just released last year. So there is post and platform here. There's the large curving slide. There's a little net climber. There's some hand holes to do some kind of like wall climbing. And then the sensory panels as well. And then this is just a back view. So you can see, you know, there is post and platform and the kids kind of climb up into a little nook area to get to the top of the slide. Again, we have some sensory panels. We have the kids on the net. So that's the hybrid. And then just refreshing our memory, when we say Trike Track, this is what we mean, a place where kids can ride around safely. The splash pad will be upgraded from what it currently is, which is a single-use spray. So we'll have different spray elements, some that shoot at different angles, some that spray up and down, and this will all be activated by the user so you can turn it on at will. And for the multi-sport court, so the bottom image shows what we're thinking, which has a center net on one court. So the court could be used for basketball, but could also be used for street hockey and soccer, could also be used for volleyball or badminton or tennis. And then the second court would not have the net. And we got a lot of feedback at the last meeting that color is a key element to park identity. So there will be opportunity to do something interesting on the courts with regards to art and color. Just to make sure that we brand the park to be a fun, friendly, child-safe place to be. So fitness equipment, this is a park that's nearby. This is Mary Hannon that has 5 pieces of fitness equipment, and we did get some positive feedback about the equipment here. So this is the image, and it's kind of hard to see in this image, but the pieces of equipment that are here are an overhead ladder. There's magnetic bells. These are basically weights on a post that can move up and down. And then there's some signage here as to 20 or 30 different exercises you can do with that. There's a climbing wall with net. There's a bench with a pull-up bar and a vertical ladder. Sometimes we'll tie like exercise bands to the ladder to do like the rubber band exercises. And then there's parallel bars. So we could duplicate Mary Hannon. We could take some elements out. We could add other elements. Other elements that we could add or substitute would be like a dip bench. There could be an incline press. There could be, this is called a core twist, so there's some resistance in these poles, but they basically rotate around. This is mostly kind of an upper body workout. And then this would be like a leg lift, so that would be like an abdominal workout at the station. And then there's, I don't know, I don't know how many different things you can do on the steps. So we'll be looking for feedback for that. And then when it comes to seating, I think at the last meeting we showed this kind of modular seating for the bench areas that would have a backrest and arms, but it could also be something a little more streamlined. Maybe around the lawn area, it could be kind of a traditional bench, or it could be traditional armchairs. Maybe at the basketball courts, in between the courts, there's double-sided seating. And then with all of these options, you know, there's no limit to whatever colors we would want to choose to help just kind of brand and give a unique feel for the park. For table seating, there's opportunities to do some picnic tables, and we would make this accessible for wheelchairs by either elongating this table or shortening a bench. We talked about doing cafe style seating with 4 chairs or 3 chairs or 2 chairs. And we talked about maybe incorporating some laser cut game tables, game boards into the tabletops. And then once again with these, there's multiple color options that are available. I will say the only thing that we don't have the opportunity to do a lot of different colors is the fitness equipment. It's available in orange and green. But everything else is there's plenty of opportunity to make sure that the community has its stamp on this park. And then the last thing I want to talk about is edge definition. So this top image is the existing metal bollards at the edge of the field. I think in one of the options I showed maybe there could be a wood guardrail where we don't need really separation, or where we're not worried about a ball entering in the street. Maybe there could just be single wood post. And then, so we should also talk about fencing. So the existing fencing is this black picket fencing around the play areas, and then around the retaining walls, and at the sports courts we have black chain link fence. So there's some opportunity where we're installing new fence to maybe substitute the chain link fence with a welded wire fence. This is over at Mary Hannon Playground, and the advantage of doing something like this in a gray is that it promotes visibility throughout. So if we want to clear sight lines and make the park feel safe and secure, and that you can see everything that's happening all at once, then the gray wire mesh is a great option. And then this bottom image is just showing that we could incorporate color in the post. So once again, you can see everything that's happening behind the fence, and then we've got a little bit of color at the post just to kind of accentuate and make the area feel more dynamic and inviting. So that brings us to the listening and discussion portion. And once again, this recording is going to be at the boston.gov Winthrop-playground site. The last meeting is also there. And I'll turn it back over to Nate.
All right. Thanks, Monique. So I think what may be beneficial is still keeping the presentation up so that we can jump through the concepts. There was a lot of great chat in the chat feature where people were talking about each concept that they were interested in. So with that being said, especially in relation to the play, I'll reiterate the 5 components of play again, which is social, physical, cognitive, sensory, and communication. There's already been some great comments about how each scheme relates to that. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up to comments, questions. So feel free you can both put it in the chat. I'll do my best to incorporate and answer that. But also, if you want to raise your hand, you can unmute yourself and then you can make your comments. Anybody want to raise their hand? I see that in the chat feature, but you can certainly raise your hand and unmute and then answer as well. I saw one chat asking about if there's been any talk about a name change of the park. That has not come up through our department yet. If that is something that is interested, the community is interested in doing, there is a process to do that, and I can have that outlined and everything for our next meeting. And I can also include that in our meeting minutes to share back. That is typically community led. We don't want to be naming it internally, so we look to the community for naming. So that process would be led from the community. With that being said, Christine, who's our first hand up? Did you see?
E. Joseph, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to say it was a really nice presentation. It looks like a lot of really good thought went in there. So thank you for that. But so my suggestion with the incline is maybe like a mini zip line. I was concerned about that drainage. I put some of those things in the chat, but what about dogs? Are we going to put signage up to make sure that, you know, when the kids go down for bedtime, it's not going to be overrun by dogs and then the cleanup that comes with it? Thank you.
Great, good points. We will be including our typical signage, so dogs will be allowed in the park as long as they are leashed, just like they are in all city parks, well, most city parks. So the leash law will still be in effect. Dogs are not allowed in the playground spaces, but lawns for the most part could be still used. Next hand.
Domingos, you can unmute yourself.
Hi guys, how y'all doing? I'm actually gonna go off the dog question. My suggestion would be if we can add a dog park. There's tons of dogs in the area and nowhere to take them. If there's a way that, you know, a piece of the park can be designated so we don't have that issue of having, you know, dog poop across the whole area. But if there's something that we can do to accommodate the folks in the area that do have pets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good comment. I think one of these schemes does have some extra lawn space that we could look at. Right now, that's not in our cost estimate. So dog recreation spaces, we typically include, you know, a drinking fountain for the pets. It also has a fairly elaborate drainage system to make sure it stays, you know, sanitary. So we would have to be looking at kind of the priority list of that and what size that is. So I think in this scheme in particular, we have that larger space that's right adjacent to the school. It might be a conflict putting it right against the school. So that's something we could certainly look at, you know, is that something, a buffer or something that we could put between the school, but we can continue to explore that. See another hand up.
Next we have Alexandro.
So I have a few little things. So first one is trash. Is there like, do you guys have like an idea of how many trash cans will be up, where they'll be located? If there's a way that we can get big trash cans, colorful trash cans, so they can be seen, because we do spend a lot of time cleaning the park after we do what we do, and a lot of that reason is because of there's only like 2 trash cans, and they're like one's in the beginning and then one's on the other side. And sometimes it's just like there's none like by the court areas, so people have to walk to those 2 designated areas to throw trash. There is the school dumpster, but sometimes that gets full or it's just a little pain to get it open. So trash is one thing that I definitely get a little worried about with the park.
Yeah, we definitely will be
to keep it clean.
Certainly, we definitely will be including trash cans throughout the park. We do have a standard trash barrel that you may see those over at Mary Hannon that has the park's logo etched into it. I know as a department we're in the process of that evaluating those trash barrels, which are larger, but we're also trying to incorporate a recycling program. So that the barrel selection is still kind of in evaluation is still underway for those, but we definitely will ensure that there's a mix of both temporary, barrels that are out during the high use season, as well as permanent barrels for the rest of the year. So that will be something that once we're down to a preferred plan, we can get a better idea of where those would be.
Nate, can I interject about trash barrels also?
Yep.
When there's events, feel free to reach out to me and I can make sure there's actual extra trash barrels there that our park maintenance will drop off and then pick up right after also.
Oh, that would be great. And yeah, other thing is just if maybe we can get a little bit more track space on because I really do like the Scheme C, because Scheme C, like Talisha was pointing out, it definitely give our kids more recreation space, so we can add more things there for them, and we still have our own space when it comes to the courts and stuff like that in that nature. But it seems like the track space is a little smaller with Scheme C. So if
Yeah.
there was maybe a way we can make that a little bit, like Scheme A's track field looks pretty big and a little bit more. So it's not just like, I can, like, for example, like my son, he likes to like ride his bike and stuff like that around a track. But when it's small, he'll literally come up to me and he'll be like, "Papa, this is too small. This is boring."
It could
So
be that so with the playground areas, we do fence those in completely. So it could be that maybe there's a smaller track that's interior, and maybe we look at trying to connect the walks here, and maybe there's a secondary larger track.
yeah, that would be perfect. All right, thank you. That's all.
Great, thank you. I see some other comments I'll just point out from the chat. There was some comments about including activities for people with disabilities and not just children. I think we're certainly aware of that. We're trying to include that both in having an accessible entrance off of Deja, as well as having full accessibility throughout the entire site. So any users, whether mobility impairment or not, has access to every single element. Any benches or picnic tables will be fully ADA compliant with both wheelchair and companion seating. Exercise equipment is fully accessible for any mobility impairments to go directly to it.
That's correct.
And engage with it. So I should say not just to it, but engaging.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I saw a couple of comments about the zip line, and I saw, Nate, that you addressed it, but just so that everyone's clear, zip line was the first thing that came to my mind with the slope, but because of the clearance that's needed, all the space around it has to be utilized for safety zones. So then it would virtually take away from the playground areas. So
Yeah.
you could either have a zip line or you could have a playground.
Can you go to option B
Sure.
for Terry?
Wrong way. Come on. Okay.
So one other thing, just where we talked about those trees that are in the existing playground area and the potential of removing those. Obviously, we don't want to remove any trees if we don't need to. The one thing that we're in conflict with those two trees in particular is that that specific type of tree has a debris that comes off of it that tends to be like a black coating, so that you see that on the rubber surfacing in there. So if we're looking to keep the playground in that space and keeping it as clean as possible. That's one reason why those trees might be in conflict. The scheme that we showed those preserved, it is where we're proposing the splash pad underneath of them, where the water will help clean that area and we can spray that down and clean it easier. So that doesn't become quite as specific of an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that the school age playground, the rubber surfacing, it looks like, when I first saw it, I thought it was asphalt, but it's actually like a bright blue rubber, or like a royal blue rubber surfacing. But it just looks black with all of the staining from the tree.
Mhm. Joseph, as much as I would absolutely love that, I don't think any lawyer would allow that. So one thing with all play equipment, we're governed by what's called CPSI, which is Certified Playground Safety Inspection. Yeah, I definitely feel you on that. Sometimes it does. And if you look at it very pragmatically, it can tend to take away some of the adventure and the risk. So what we like to do is allow kids to be adventurous, to have some of those elements. So that's where that are risk, but safe. So that's where looking at embankment slides, things like that. I know we talked about, some people made comments about rock climbing earlier. Those are all ways that we can introduce risk assessment for kids, but do it in a safe enough manner that they may get hurt, but it won't be any permanent injury. And that's where kids learn. You fall, you learn, and you see what your body can and can't do. So those are all elements that we put into our playground design. I see the comment about a book or magazine stand. I haven't installed one of those before. I don't think that's necessarily something that would be outside of the realm that we could do. I know my daughter's school has one, so I certainly think that would be a possibility.
Yeah, we see those everywhere popping up in neighborhoods organically. So
Yeah,
that would be an easy thing
certainly.
to provide.
And it would be great if we had a friends group that could help manage that. If Christine wants to plug her work in establishing friends groups.
Joseph, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, great.
So sorry, I'm like really lobbying hard for this zip line. You know the playground that, so not a traditional zip line, right? The area playground that is behind White Stadium. You know that's a nice big play area. You familiar with that behind Franklin Park on the back end of White Stadium?
Yeah, so just if we were to do a zip line, where's my annotate?
Is that Tiffany Moore you're talking about?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Is it Tiffany Moore Playground?
I'm not sure the name, but it's
Okay.
not like a zip line, like in the sense that I'm saying, right? The
Mhm.
child hangs from this apparatus and then propels themselves from one end of this apparatus to the next. So it's not overhead at all. It's part of there's like
Play structure.
Yeah, it's part of the
Yeah.
play structure on the lower level.
Mhm.
But typically I only see it like maybe 8 feet wide. And I'm thinking maybe make that a little bit longer. And it looked like one of those playground apparatus would allow for that. So not zip line. I don't want anybody to think I'm like advocating for sending your children down Superman style through these trees, but something a little bit longer than just what is in that playground in the JP area over there behind White Stadium.
Yeah, but you just said it 8 feet wide, and then you'd need 25 or 30-foot length, and that's the size of half of a playground that we have right now. So it would be a zip line, or it would be 3 or 4 play structures.
So the other thing that's, again, just looking at how safety is and the CPSI dictates play, you need 6 foot of use zone on each side of it. So even if for any elevated play, so if you put a single balance beam, you need, it actually has to be at minimum 12 feet wide, because you have to have 6 feet on each side of it. So that's where sometimes it's deceiving how the size of the structure and then the use you have to put around it. That's what oftentimes is the limiting factor. Charles, I'm curious, I think I have another hand, but I just saw his comment. I'm curious if any of the concepts you're seeing, and you can feel free to answer in chat, lean more towards a grilling area or grilling section that you prefer. And then there's another hand up, so we can certainly call on that person. I don't see who it is though.
Mingo, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
So I think with these picnic table areas, we could extend these pads. So right now there's 5 feet around so that you can get wheelchair access around them. But I think our next iteration is to maybe extend the concrete pads around the picnic table so that you could get a grill in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this option B, the picnic tables are right adjacent to streets, and then the sidewalk is wide enough so that you could pull. I'm thinking you're coming from the sidewalk, and then the picnic table is right there. There's probably a trash can that's located right there as well. So that would be your grilling area, and then you still have the circulation into the park. But there's no reason why, the grilling stations could be further into the park as well. They could be close to the sidewalk. They could be further in so that you really feel like you're in the park setting.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, guys. I just wanted to suggest emergency call boxes. I know we have them at Ronin Park and a few other parks across the city.
Mm-hmm.
I know this it's a
I think we might have lost you. You trailed off there at the end there. You you trailed off right after you said at Ronin Park.
Sorry, guys, my Bluetooth in my car picked up. I was just a suggestion if we can put emergency call boxes in the park in case of an emergency when someone doesn't have access to a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, it's a beautiful area. Love my city, but we're plagued with different types of violence across the city, and that's something that was added a few years back to Ronin Park when a young lady was assaulted and the gentleman lost his life trying to help. So if we can add, an emergency call box for any reason for someone to access, that would be a great addition to the park.
Yeah, that's a great comment. So any of those that are put in our parks, we have to coordinate through the police department, and basically they evaluate, the infrastructure and the ability to manage those. So we can certainly raise that to the community resource officer and see if that's something they would be interested in exploring for here. But that has to be approved through their department.
Anyone else want to raise their hand?
I think still feel free to chat and add comments, but I think one of the things, Monique, if we can jump through maybe some of the play equipment slides or the sport court slides or any of those things, and we can get some input on any of those structures or equipment that people are thinking. Can start with the first one if you want. We can just go through these again real quick. And with
Domingos
that,
had his hands up.
yeah, I was going to say, Domingos, you can grab unmute again right there. Oh, I think he.
Yeah, I was just texting it in the message. Who do we have to contact with BPD to get that ball rolling?
I'll do that.
I think that is. Yep. Yeah, please.
I'll do that from our end.
Yeah, that's one of the most important pieces we need across the city. I grew up in this area. As a kid playing in that park, we found dead bodies as kids. We've had people robbed. We've had seniors get assaulted. We've had sexual assaults. Like, we've had a good amount of incidents within that area, within that school area, that this will be something that would be a great benefit to bring that park to up to speed to the 2022 phase.
Certainly. Yeah, no, and that's certainly nothing any child should ever see. So I'll reach out directly to the district outreach officer and see if I can get that process started. Thank you for that, though. So looking at the 2 to 5 structure here, I see Ejos already commented that she likes the hybrid approach. And then Jennifer commented that she likes the Supernova, the wide embankment slide, and springers. So just looking at this slide real quick, it sounds, in some of the comments earlier, it sounds like people really do lean towards the hybrid approach with both the platform and some sort of net climbing component that offers a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more options. So we can certainly explore that and see what fits into the concepts. I'm
going the wrong way. Sorry.
That's all right. And then for the, I see another hand raised, so you can.
So with the equipment that you got that right there, yeah. So as long as we can have like some type of monkey bars, or definitely have a platform on it, and a slide that's like kind of sufficiently high enough for kids, or even if it's like a swirly slide that does a little bit of extra swirls or something like that, that would be good too, because the slides that we have now are kind of like, for like, my son's only 6 and even he's like, I don't like
Yeah.
like, he's all about big everything. He's so small, but he's all about big everything. He wants everything to be big, long, and fun. So yeah, so if we can get like a more like a bigger slide and platforms and things like that is great. Nets and a monkey bar, only because I grew up on those monkey bars that's already in the park. It was one thing that I had a lot of fun with, was the monkey bars. That was one thing that we always had that was like, okay, our monkey bars is cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to keep that concept there too, kind of like keep the tradition going of the monkey bars being in the park.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it in this lower right-hand corner, but the monkey bars is different. It's got like the central line through it, but it's an interesting twist on a monkey bar where this little kid is right here.
Yeah. That's I'm all about technology. I'm a software engineer, so yeah. That looks cool. That looks like I would want to use it.
Mm-hmm, right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, my little guy was on all the big kids equipment well before he should have been, and I was running up behind him and underneath him, making sure he didn't fall.
Yeah, like there's that big slide on Adams Street in Dorchester that they built, and you like walk all the way. Like it takes like it looks like a stairway that they ended up taking off and turning it into a slide.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, he loves that slide. My son loves that slide. Like we go out our way to go to that slide. So yeah, but I like the way it looks. As long as we get some type of monkey bars and a nice big slide, even if we can incorporate the rock climbing one that we had that you guys were showing, then it has the slide that looks like a real nice slide as well, with the rock climbing, and then you get the rock climb up, and then it's not high, it's not too high too, so it's kind of perfect. Like you were saying before, it still incorporates safety with a little bit of risk, and then you have the slide part, and then if maybe we can add on the other side of that rock climbing part a wider slide, so that we can stop the congestion, because every child needs to go up from the bottom up. Every child. Like one of our neighborhood members, Christian, just had his son, and he just posted his son on Snap. His son's only like 2, and he's going up the slide before he goes down the slide.
Yeah.
So it's bound to happen. So controlling congestion there would be great. If we can kind of incorporate both, that would be great.
So Nate,
I just saw one question about how long you have to decide. So this meeting, both the recording of this meeting is going to be posted online, as well as a PDF of this presentation. You certainly can share this with other community members, especially kids input, or any other park users would be great. feel free to email me any additional feedback. I'll include that in the meeting notes, share that with Monique. And then she's going to be looking at including that feedback in the preferred plan.
You didn't hear this from me, but if somebody were to attach a rope to a tree, I wouldn't say anything.
And I'm gonna act like I didn't hear that. So
I'm just kidding.
right.
I'm just kidding. I love the zip lines too, and if there's any way, oh, you know what? For zip lines, there's some elements with the post and platforms that are they're handholds on a post and platform structure that's like a zip line. So it would be the length of like a monkey bar, but you would actually hold onto a handle and zoom from one platform to the other. We could do that. That would be kind of like a zip line.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things, at least the two structures, and maybe this one on the bottom on this slide, talking about those zip line or monkey bar type elements, these are all customizable. Those are all standard pieces, so we can select what elements we like to add on those. So I know somebody was talking about monkey bars earlier, that's why I bring that one up. So we can certainly look at how those components could be incorporated on any of these structures. I see Domingo says it likes the gray fencing with the yellow posts. Another thing with, the yellow posts are the ones reflective of at Mary Hannon that match the playground. But any of the color schemes we come up with here, we could get those posts to match, I believe. Jennifer comments she likes the courts further away from the school, so B or C. Nice. Monique, you want to flip through any of the site amenities ones? We could look at the benches or the tables. I know we already had the comments about the grills, so that's certainly.
Fitness equipment.
There was one comment in the chat about, I think, an additional pull-up. If I said that wrong, I'll look back in the chat record, so I will get what you did recommend, right?
About an additional, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I think somebody made a comment about an additional pull-up bar. Yeah, so we'll look at that, and there was extra pull-up. I did get it right. Perfect. And then there was other comments about double-sided seating around the courts. That's a great way to kind of differentiate those. I think some of that comes into play on, between, if it's a basketball and we are including something with a tennis or volleyball, some of them may have side netting on it just to keep those balls from going off the side. But you still could have something like that that's engaging both sides of that. Then the laser cut tables, yep, that eliminates the pooling, so you don't have to worry about water sitting on them for a long time. The other reason we like that is, and Monique had this one over at Mary Hannon, is that we already had the perforated tops of it for the drainage purposes. So what they did on this one is they used that perforation pattern and made it a game table. So it's serving both purposes, which is great.
Yep. And this is a two-seated table. This table could be located with concrete on both sides, so it would be wheelchair accessible on both sides.
Yeah. And that middle graphic shows one that is accessible on that third side. Or fourth side, sorry. And then some of the tables that are shown. So like right now, this red table, typically when those are the ADA compliant ones of those are elongated so that anybody in a mobility device can wheel directly to the table. So Monique, do you want to answer the questions on how the site furnishings are handled in the heat?
Yeah. So they're actually not, they're actually comfortable in the summertime. Obviously the lighter the color, the better. But I've never sat on a metal bench and burned my bottom in the summertime. Although it seems like that would be the case.
Yeah. So they're coated metal, so that certainly helps dampen the heat. The other thing I will say is, for the most part, we're locating these under trees and on areas that will be semi-shaded. So that should help on any of those issues as well.
Yeah. And so the reason why we like metal is because it's durable. There are some recycled plastic options, but no, I haven't seen one that hasn't faded or buckled over the course of the years or cracked. If we're going to put a recycled plastic or a high density polyethylene table adjacent a grill area, and God forbid somebody puts a hot utensil on it, then it could melt. They don't wear in the sun very well. Just you want to keep I think we want to keep this park looking new and fresh for as long as we can, and metal's the best option for that.
Yeah. And just like this red one shows, we can do these as bright, vibrant colors that fit into a color scheme throughout the park as well. What were some of the other slides? I think there was some, yeah, so that slide's a good example. So the previous slide right there. So there you see the color options of any of these benches can come in. So it's pretty extensive.
I think putting some armchairs and maybe a little side table to do like conversational seating is fun. So it could be like your outdoor seating area, your outdoor living room. Any other thoughts on fitness equipment? I'm not a fitness person, so.
I see there are some comments about asking about flower beds. So we typically do not install flower beds, just within the capacity of our maintenance to upkeep. We rely on friends groups for that. With that being said, we could, if that's something we're looking at establishing here, it's something we can discuss and see if it's something we could help install, and then that friends group takes over maintenance of it. We also have a daffodils bulbs planting program that friends can get bulbs through the Parks Department to put into the park. So that's another way of including flower beds in the design.
Yeah, I know our neighborhood gets like usually 1,000 or 2,000 bulbs every spring, and we do a big community effort, and it's fairly simple. I think the other reason for flowers was just kind of besides the maintenance, it's a good place for hiding unwanted things adjacent kids areas. So kind of low and pretty is an easy way to keep things free from sharps and other things that we don't want in the playground. Nate, do you want to talk about a rower at the fitness area?
The rower that we don't do. So what we typically see with the fitness equipment is we tend to stick with stationary equipment or things without gears that need greasing. So some parks have like rowing or cycling equipment, but what we tend to have happen with that is that because they are out in the weather, dirt, snow, ice gets into those and they break down and they're not usable in the long term. So what we did at Mary Hannon, we had the magnetic bells, which those are movable. So they go up and down so you can do lifting with that, but they don't have any mechanical components of it. All it is a sleeve over the bar. So that, we don't see that as an ongoing maintenance issue. And then what we're also looking at with this one is these core twist ones, which are a similar system. It's a bar that's rotating in there. And so that gives you a more engaged, more dynamic workout without having the risk of equipment that will be breaking down on us. So I think I saw some other information about including more steps in the fitness area. So that's one thing we can work at in including. And then Joseph, yes, for the bulbs, I will share the contact for the bulbs.
Yep, I put the link in the chat. It's
Oh,
on the
perfect.
boston.gov website.
Yep, perfect. There was some comments about a variety of the site furnishings and tables, so it's not all just 4-seaters or things like that. We can certainly look at, doing a mix of 2, 3, and 4-seaters.
Yeah, I think a few of the tables will be 4-seaters, but I think the majority of all the tables and the seating will be wheelchair accessible.
All right. Let's keep going through any more. So we already got good input on the toddler trike loop. Got good input on the play. I think we got some good input. Let's go to the swings. I don't think we talked much about the swings. Do you guys have any inputs? I know when I was flying for this for the meeting, I saw at least 2 kids, and both of them commented about swings and that there were no swings and they wanted swings. So as far as I know, the Face Me swing that's shown here, we do not have any of these in our Parks Department as of right now. But one of the things we like about that is the engagement of caregivers as well as siblings. The image on the left shows an older sibling with I assume sibling with a younger one. So you get the ability of engaging multiple ages as well as caregivers with the children. So that's one thing we think would be a really good addition to the park. I see.
Yeah, that face-to-face interaction is so important, especially at early developmental ages. And then, my son, when he was in the bucket seat, I would always stand in front of him so I could see him, and he'd kick me half the time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of worth it. I have some great shots, and to see the joy on a kid's face while they're swinging, to me is just amazing.
And my daughter is 5 and she still likes that part of kicking me while she's on the swing. She thinks it's hilarious. So, but as a caregiver, I mean, all I can think about is, I'd rather be swinging than just standing there. So it's a way of, because all I can think about is that woman in the bluish sweater laying down there. I mean, she looks like she's having a ball, right? So I just love that idea. So it sounds like people are in favor of that. I see some other people have talked about the single swing. Yeah, there we go, Teresa. I feel you. You got to teach the kid to pump so that you're the one actually getting pushed, right? So we can look at within those concepts, including a variety of these options and seeing what's available. Right. And then the spinners, these are all, again, great ways of engaging, a lot of kids on a fairly small footprint. You see on the Supernova one, there's 4. The one on the left has at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids in that piece of equipment, which is just remarkable.
Yeah. My son always likes to push. I get tired of pushing. I like the center wheel, and you can make yourself move around. That's like the old sit and spin, but a larger version.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that Supernova is a favorite. I have terrible balance, but it's one of those challenging exercises that I've seen like little 2-year-olds lay on it, right, and kind of like use their foot and rotate around. And then it's one of those things that a kid can go back to because it's always challenging, and they can just get better and better at it. So it's not a piece of equipment that someone's going to get bored with. It's something that's going to grow with the child as they age. So the spinners are advanced merry-go-rounds. Yeah, I think the multi-use spinner like this one is kind
Mhm,
of an advanced merry-go-round. But the thing with the merry-go-round is you get tired of pushing. Like
mhm.
I will actually sit my butt on the platform and use my leg to push. That's my little trick for pushing the merry-go-round because, yeah, it's a great, Domingo says it's a great arm workout, but I am
Yeah.
so out of shape.
Yeah, my only worry with that one is it's so little that I can only imagine I would be dizzy after like the second rotation. Um, so one thing I saw E. Joseph made a comment about water friendly spinner. So I, as far as I know, we don't, one, our water play is usually on concrete. And again, any of these types of play equipment need to have the safety surfacing around them. So they don't tend to be uh, in the same area, as well as most of the manufacturers don't recommend you being wet on them from a safety standpoint and slipping. I don't think it would be a rust issue because the equipment's designed to be outside, but so that's the one factor with that. It did raise the point though, speaking of water, that one thing we haven't talked about at all in this is that we will be incorporating a bottle filling drinking fountain into the park design. So that's both, it has both a drinking fountain side to it as well as bottle filling.
Yeah. And the other thing we didn't talk about, Nate, was site lighting, and we should say that site lighting right now is kind of inconsistent through the park. We will be providing site lighting in the final scheme, and we'll show the lighting locations, but the intent is to ensure that all of the seating and all the pedestrian walkway areas are lit at night, and we'll also be looking at locating site lighting and avoiding conflicts with tree canopies because I know, it doesn't make sense to have a light pole and that pole's up in a tree and all you get is a bunch of shadows. So site lighting is an important component to the park improvements.
There are spotlights on the basketball courts. The one thing with that is obviously those are done with timers and everything so that the courts aren't lit all night long. So that's something that will be incorporated as well. They usually have solar sensors with timers on them. I see the comment about bathrooms or porta potties. So we don't have the ability to put anything permanent in the park, just the sheer cost and maintenance and upkeep of those. So we tend not to do that. What we have done in the past is anywhere there are events, which I know there's basketball tournaments and everything that are here, we do sometimes put concrete pads for where a porta potty could be placed and secured for those events, but they would not be permanent fixtures of any sort. And with those porta potties, those are not put in by the Parks Department. Those are done through the leagues or permit holders. There's a rush of comments, so now I'm trying to scroll back up. So I think those are mostly about the porta johns. And then power outlets. At this point, we do not have outlets that are accessible just because they get damaged so easily, and then it becomes a safety hazard. I see the question about when do we anticipate construction starting and ending? So our next meeting, which Monique and her team is going to take all of the information we got tonight, they're going to revise the concepts and come back with a preferred plan, make sure we're all on the same page for that. That's going to be on March 9th. Then she and her team are going to work through putting that into construction documents. And then we'll go out to bid and we anticipate construction starting in July with a spring of 2023 opening. And then I see Stanley made a comment about cell phone station chargers. So there was a pilot for those cell phone chargers. I don't think we put any of those in parks because, again, most of the time we were seeing that in like the plazas and everything downtown, the outlets in for plugging them in were actually breaking. So you would have these charging stations that nobody could actually connect to. And then I saw the power outlets comment. So, but again, we just see that they get vandalized and then they don't actually work. So and then the Stanley, when does your league end? You can put it in the chat or on mute, either or. End of August. We'll have to see what that does for our schedule. It might be tough because obviously we can't do construction during the winter months. So we're really looking at, you know, our end of summer, fall construction, and then spring construction. And we want to limit the amount this goes into spring of 2023. We ideally don't have it go into the summer months, but we can look. We'll look into that, and then we can definitely talk once we have a contractor on board. So this will all be publicly bid. Once we have that contractor on board, we can work more detailed out with that. Yeah. All right. With that said, I see our clock, the timer is getting close. Is there any other last minute comments? Anything? Domingos, I see your hands up. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to be real adamant about this power situation because across the city, different leagues. I run a program out of Clifford Park. Stanley runs a few different leagues in different parks, and we're required to pull a special permit to be able to use generators to power equipment that we bring on for these different events that we host at these parks.
Mm-hmm.
And last year was very costly because we have to get a licensed electrician to be able to pull the permit, to be able to use the generator through the fire department and through ISD. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I know in New York, it's something that they have at just about all their parks, and it's under lock and key that the individual who is actually going to utilize the park would get a code to be able to access that power outlet so they don't have to bring a generator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we here in Boston can come up to that speed because, you know, we're going to put in, you know, $3-4 million into this park, but we don't have no power outlets. We're not able to utilize the park at its full potential because we're still behind the 8 ball instead of being in front of the 8 ball. So, I mean, I know there's ways that we can go about having things brought in to make these things work. Like I said, in New York, they have it at just about all their parks, and it's under lock and key. And the person who pulls the permit gets it's sort of like a lockbox.
Sure.
You get a key code to it. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we can certainly look into that. That comes with fairly extensive electric upgrades. So that's something we can look into for this and just see what extent, you know, what's the extent of that with what we're proposing here. So that we can look into that. But but like you said, it would be something that is locked and secured. Yep.
Before we go, I see Talisha feels very strongly about Scheme C. And I just want to say Scheme C has the larger school age and toddler age playground together with the splash pad that's up. But Scheme B also has a larger school age and toddler age playground. The one thing, so both could accommodate swings. The one thing that's different also is that Scheme B has the grade change in the school age playground. So there's an opportunity there to do the embankment slide. So going from 53 up to 63, then that gives us opportunity to do like hills and valleys in the play area. Whereas Scheme C, this is all at the same same grade. So there's no embankment slides. Everything's all at the same level. But both are expanded play areas. Again, scheme C, we keep the trees, and this is concrete underneath the trees, and the hope is that the water, it's not going to be black stained concrete. And then scheme B, the trees go away. We put new shade trees that will mature over the time. But this is like a sloped hill, whereas scheme C, it's a wall kind of as it is currently. So those are the two. I didn't hear I didn't see anything about scheme A, which is kind of the existing layout, but if we could get some feedback from the group about scheme B and C, that would be great. And then we can,
Stanley just made a comment, and the hills and the valleys would wear the kids out. Stanley, if you know my daughter, you'd want her worn out. So that's that. But again, that's one element of, you know, using the site and the topography as an element of play. The other thing, with that being said, scheme B and both in scheme C, you know, what Monique and her team can do is they can look at pulling some of the elements of each, and then we'll come back with a concept that pulls some of those together, and it's not just one or the other.
right. If the only thing that's driving the favoritism for scheme C is the larger play area, I just want to point out that scheme B also has a larger play area.
To answer Charles' question, yes, there's still 2 courts. And then I did see one question about parking. So we can't take any park plan for parking. So we would not be having any parking space on this.
I'm still reading the new messages.
I know it's hard to keep, my screen's not big enough to have it scroll so I can see them all. So certainly feel free to keep adding comments and everything. Monique, if you don't mind going to the very last slide, just so they can see contact information. So I just want to reiterate, so here's the website for the project. Tonight's meeting, which was recorded, will be posted on that, as well as the slide deck, so you can feel free to look through those. We'll also be posting the meeting notes on this. If there are any other if for whatever reason you didn't feel comfortable commenting today, you can certainly feel free to email me any feedback you have. I'll share that with Monique and her team, so that will be incorporated as feedback as well.
And Talisha loves scheme C.
There you go.
All right.
So with that being said, I think we're out of time. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. If there are any ongoing issues or concerns of the park, certainly feel free to reach out, and I strongly suggest using 311 for those, so we get immediate responses. Our next meeting will be March 9th. Between now and then, do not hesitate to reach out, share with your friends and neighbors, and we look forward to that meeting where Monique and her team will have a preferred plan that I'm sure we will all have some good feedback on and agree upon. So, all right. Thanks everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.